Today we're going to talk about cutting down trees when you are a total beginner like I am. Now I've cut down a few trees. This is my first time. I am in no way an expert on this. I I get by. I'm able to cut all my own firewood, that kind of thing. I'm not going to call myself in any way, shape, or form an expert on this, but this is how you do it if you've never done this before. No, we're not cutting down this. So rule number one is don't start with things this size. I wouldn't attempt this. I mean, that's my saw, and there's just no way I would attempt this unless I was an actual professional. So don't think you're going after trees like this. Okay, so before we get into actually cutting stuff down, I'm going to talk a little bit about the things you're going to need. I have obviously a chainsaw. This is an Echo. This is a 40cc. Uh, Not a real big saw. It's nice and light though. It's good for me to move around. It's been very dependable for me. It starts all the time. Where I don't use a chainsaw every single day, I use it, a few times a year, kind of thing. Cut up wood or cut down the odd tree. Uh, this is a pretty good option. If I was going to get more serious, I might spend a lot more money. But these are affordable and reliable. They're not the ultra cheapy ones, and they're not super expensive either. So whatever your chainsaw is, I'm sure is going to be fine as long as you operate it correctly and maintain it correctly, I guess. A few other things you're going to want to have, obviously fuel. You can buy pre-mixed fuel like this, and there's another one called True Fuel that you will see. That's not actually what's in this can. What's in this can is fuel that I've mixed up because you need, mixed oil and gas for your saw. So I just find it convenient to use the can. But you can buy that straight up. A lot more expensive to buy it this way, but if you're not using a huge amount of it, it's not a bad way to go because it stays good for a very long time. Also going to need bar and chain oil. In Canada, these come in they come in like a summer and a winter, the winter being thinner than the summer version. Doesn't say if it's, I think this is just an all-purpose one. Doesn't really matter as long as you have those things. A few other little things you're going to want are you're going to need a way of sharpening your chain. Now, I do it the old school way. I use that. That's what I sharpen my chain with. It's a chainsaw chain file. There are different sizes and depends on the chain you've got. So make sure you get the right one. There's a method of doing that. Then there's a flat file, which you're also going to want for your chain. It's the Riders, I think it's called. Anyway, I'll show you in a second what that's about. And a couple of other things you're going to need. You're probably going to want a small hatchet or an axe or something like that with you. Cut off small limbs, things like that. And this side acts as a hammer when you need to use a wedge. Now you're going to want a wedge sometimes when that tree isn't moving, or your saw blade gets stuck because it got pinched because the tree moved or something like that. You just pound that into, and that'll separate the gap enough to get your chain out. Or if you get it to the point where it's just about to go and you want it to get it go the rest of the way, you can pound that into where you saw it, and that'll pry it open, and that'll fall the tree. One of the most important things to pay attention to during this process is the chain on your chainsaw. There's a few things. Keep it not so loose that it's going to fall off, but not so tight that it's going to restrict the chain from going around. That chain needs to be sharp. I can't stress this one enough. That is the biggest difference. You can have the worst chainsaw in the world if it's running, or the cheapest chainsaw in the world with a fresh, brand new sharp chain or a really nice, well sharpened chain. It'll outperform a really expensive saw with a dull, crappy chain every single time. This is by far the most important thing to pay attention to. making sure your chain is sharp. When you're cutting, especially when the tree is on the ground and you're cutting it up into pieces, is of vital importance. And ask me how I know. Keep your chain out of the dirt. It will be dull like that. It's like 0 time that thing is dull, and then it's a bad day. You know your chain is getting dull when it's no longer wood chips that are flying out of the wood. It's like fine sawdust. And if you find yourself having to push through, then your chain's not sharp enough. A sharp chain should pretty much just eat its way right through any log. So that's the important part. I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of how I sharpen these things and how often to sharpen them. I'd say every tank of gas, every 2 tanks of gas at the most, maybe. It depends on what you're cutting and how dull your chain gets depending on the conditions you're in. But I would say at least every 2 tanks of gas, maybe every 1. It depends. You'll know. But don't wait. Stop. Do it. It doesn't take long. The way that I do it anyway, it doesn't take long. You can get fancier, like electric chain sharpeners and things like that. I just do it like old timers do, I guess. Hopefully you can see that on camera. But these are the teeth of your saw, and they're sharp here. And you'll see that they're alternating. One has a 30-degree angle this way, another one has a 30-degree angle that way, and that's how they go down the blade. And so when it cuts, so it cuts sort of one side of the wood and then the other side of the wood as it rotates. What you're doing is taking your small file. You want that leading edge to be sharp, and you want the top of it to be sharp. So these, if it's the right size for your saw, they fit right in between there quite nicely. So all you're doing here is just go in one direction, maybe the same amount of times for each tooth so that they come out even. And you can move it and you'll see just like that. You don't need a lot unless it's really, really damaged, but do them always the same way. Once you've gone around and you do every second one, like if you're doing it like that, because I'm going in this way, so I'm skipping every second one because these ones are I want to go in the other way. So I'm going to flip my saw around. I'm going to do that just because of where I'm sitting or where I'm doing this. So you're always pushing the same way on each one of these things. Then, and you don't do this every single time, your flat file, this is the leading edge. So the wood rides up on this and then hits this. So as you file these down, as you sharpen, as you file these teeth down, they go down slightly. So you take your flat file and you take a little bit of material off. Again, don't get too crazy with that. If you file them right down, then your saw is just going to bog down and just chew. It's just not going to work well. But you just take a little bit. And there is a guard you can put on as well to make sure that you're only hitting that. I don't know where mine is. It's somewhere, but anyway, that's essentially it. So make sure that your chain is sharp and in good shape. It should be about that tight, so you can see underneath of it, but it's not going to fall off. You don't want it too tight. I forgot to mention this tool comes with your saw. So screwdriver on one end, and then there's 2 of these. One of these is for a spark plug, and the other one is for those. That's how you are going to tighten Each saw is going to be a little different on how you tighten and loosen, but basically I'm not going to do it on mine, but I just loosen these nuts a little bit. And then there's a screw that I turn, which is right here, and that will tighten or loosen the chain, and then I tighten these nuts back up. That's all there is to it. But when you put a new chain on, you'll find that it gets super loose real fast. They stretch when they're new pretty quickly. So you're going to want to pay attention to the how much slack you've got in your chain on a new chain fairly often. Like, you know, it doesn't take long for it to slack off every couple of cuts kind of thing. Take a look at it and just keep on top of it. So fuel goes in here, and these are built so that that tool that I just showed you that came with it makes this easy to undo. And I've got fuel in this one. And bar oil goes over here. And I'm full of oil. So I should be ready to go. If you want to know the safe way and the simple way to start these things, I know you see lots of people, oh, that's going to show up. They'll take it like this and they have it like that and they throw it down, and you know, you got that dangling around and stuff. That's great, but if you've not done this before, it could be a little intimidating. So the simple way to do it is you can step on that. So I turn this on, prime the fuel, pull the choke out, give it a couple of shots like that, push that back in. Now if you caught it, the mistake I made was I didn't have my chain brake on. That's why the chain moved when I started it. And that's why you want to be safe when you're starting these things. You want to make sure your chain brake's on. I want to mention that that start that you saw was the first time I've started this thing since last fall. I was cutting up a bunch of firewood, and that's how easy it was to start. That's why I like this brand. It's they start easy, and they're not complaining about fuel too much and things like that. So that's the gas that was in it was gas that I put in 6 months ago or more, maybe 7 or 8 months ago. That's what's in it right now, and that's how easy it started and ran. I haven't done any modifications to this saw. I have tuned it, you know, the low and fast idle, that kind of stuff. Not going to get into that in this video. That's not what this is about. I'm going to show you how to actually cut down a tree, but I just want to go over some of the basics for those that have never done this before or maybe seen it done once. And again, this is from the perspective of somebody that is not a professional at this at all. So let's go find a tree to cut down. Before I get into the actual cutting of the tree, I want to talk a little bit about the conditions and when to cut and all that kind of thing. Right now, it's the middle of April in New Brunswick, Canada. So as you can see, the leaves aren't out on the trees here yet. They are just starting to bud now, which means that the sap is flowing, but I don't have any leaves and things like that to worry about. This is probably not the best time of year to do this. The best time of year is probably November or late October, November, that kind of time, because that's when all the leaves have fallen and the sap is no longer flowing in the tree, so the tree is a little bit drier. This is probably not ideal, but for me, this is just before black fly and mosquito season, so this is, you know, I want to do this now before I have to deal with that. So that's a consideration for me. Also, not having the leaves on the trees makes it a lot simpler when you're limbing the tree and getting rid of all that kind of stuff as well. Woodpecker in the background. It's also important that you do this when it's dry. You don't want to be slipping and just dealing with mud and everything else. Other things for consideration is where the where the tree is located that you're cutting, assuming you're cutting it because you want to use it for firewood or something else. You don't want it so far away from where you need it to be that it's impossible to get there with it. You need to be able to, or you can have a vehicle or a trailer or something close by to put it in. So things to think about when there's a lot of stuff to think about when it comes to actually selecting stuff to cut down for firewood. This back here is a piece of my property. It's not far. It's downhill to where I need the firewood to go. It's actually not very far from where I stack dry and my woodshed. It's just in the back. So I selectively take a couple of trees here and there when I'm looking for stuff. The stuff I'm cutting down now, I'm not going to be burning this coming winter. It's probably going to be the winter after, so that it's seasoned that far ahead. I've got enough wood that I cut down last year that I cut up and split and dried in the woodshed now for next winter. Like I'm already set for next winter. That the stuff that I'd be looking to harvest now is for winter starting, December of 2026. This is 2025. So that's ideally where you want to be, more than a year ahead in your firewood to get it properly dried and processed, and especially if you're not spending a lot of time doing it. But cutting it down this spring to burn this coming winter, you can do if you pick standing dead trees, and I see a couple here that I might actually snatch for that reason. If they're standing dead, they're already dried out, they'll probably be fine. But if you're cutting trees that are alive or whatever, then if you don't have to burn them this winter, please don't. But if you cut them in the spring, make sure they're really, really, well stacked and dry, split and dried. So the other part of this is when you're cutting firewood, you cut it down. I'm going to cut it into the length of wood that I need. And the length of wood that I need, this is, my bar measures about 16 inches from the tip to back here at the saw itself. That's how I measure. And that's actually the length of wood that I want for the stove. So you'll see when I do that, how I measure out the actual length of wood that I cut it in. I'm going to cut it that short right here, right where it falls, and get it back that way. If I cut it, I could cut it into 4-foot lengths if it's not too heavy, and try to get it home that way. Might be easier. We'll see. But I do need to cut it smaller to get it where I need to go, because I don't have a vehicle back here. I can't get a vehicle back here. So all sorts of different things to consider. So the tree I think I'm going to get is right here behind me. I believe it's a maple, and maple's a great firewood. This one's fairly straight. It should be easy to, it's not going to give me a huge amount of wood, but it's a manageable piece. It's a manageable tree for firewood, and that's something you want to consider as well. It should be an easy one to get down. The other thing you need to look at when you're looking at and you're selecting your trees is look up. What are you going to run into when that thing falls? What's it going to hit? What am I going to get hung up on? What what's the canopy look like? Like all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we'll go forward with this. In terms of safety equipment, we're going to pretend that I'm wearing a hard hat and that I'm wearing chain cutting pants. I don't have any, and again, so my advice would be to actually have the proper stuff. I do have safety glasses, and I think that one's a good one, and I do have good steel-toed boots on. So at bare minimum, I would think those two things are what you want. Maybe gloves, but I theoretically should have a hard hat on, and I should have chaps on for using chainsaw. Anyway, is what it is. So what I'm doing now is figuring out where I want this tree to fall. Lots of videos show you when you're cutting down trees, they're kind of in these open space areas and it's really nice, and you cut down the tree and it falls. And reality is, in the woods like this, it's quite often a lot more difficult to figure out how to get the tree down because there's a whole bunch of other crap in the way. In this case, I'm going to have to have it go directly this way. And I'll show you how to get it to fall directly that way. This one's nice and straight, so that should be easy. This tree here, no, this one here might cause me a problem. So I'm going to actually cut that one and maybe even that one. Just let them go. I'm not going to use them for anything, so I'm just going to cut them so they get out of the way. Sometimes you have to cut a bunch of trees that you aren't going to use because they're in the way. And so making sure you've got a place for it to go is of utmost importance. All right. See, I had a slight mishap with the chain. It's a newer chain, so it's stretching out pretty quick. Okay. I think we're good. So I want this tree to go that way. It's going to be my clearest path. I might have one tree it might hang up on, but I think it should be able to push through it. We will see. So how to aim a tree. Hopefully you can see this. There is a line on every saw. Mine isn't like black. You could take a black marker and make that black, but that's how you aim your tree. So what I want to do is, so I want it to go just that way, so that the line, I need it to move that way, which means that I'm going to cut it like this. I'm going to cut a face cut. So you're going to cut about a third of the tree out, like a wedge. You're going to come down, fairly steep angle, and then you cut straight in, or you can cut up a little bit, but straight in, and the middle, or the tip of that V that you're going to cut out of the notch out of this tree, that's what aims the tree. And you want that as flat as possible. So I want it to go that way. So it's okay to stop. Make sure you're going where you want to go. And you want this thing to be like flat. Not like that, more like that. So I've got a bit of a notch out. So I've got my notch. It's not a real steep one, but it should be good enough for what I'm doing here. This tree's got a bit of a wonky growth here, but that's what I want. And then you want to cut your back cut straight, and what will happen is it'll go this way, and then the tree will want to lean in the direction you just cut, hopefully. All I'm doing here is marking. Where I want my cut. Now, trees are unpredictable. And so when you do this, my tree is going to go that way, but they can kick up and they can fall one way or the other. So you want to make sure everything is clear, and you want to make sure you've got an escape path, which is not directly in back of it because they can kick up and back, but you want to go sort of on a 45 to it. I don't have a great escape path here, but you got stuff in the way. Probably best to get that out of your way. So now I've got it marked where I got to cut, and I'm going to make that cut, and when it starts to fall, we run. So that's a successful tree felling. You can see I got a nice stump there. It fell exactly where I wanted to put it because I made that angle, and I was able to get out of the way. It didn't kick back or anything. This is going to make some nice firewood. Now we're going to take a lot of the limbs off as much as we can. The great part about cutting down these trees in the woods like this is you've got a spot to get rid of all of the limbs. While I was out here doing this, spied something just off here, and I'm not really sure what the hell happened here. It's the strangest looking. Let's see if I can get a closer look here. If anybody knows what the hell happened to this poor tree, let me know in the comments. That's weird. Bear? Maybe? I'm not sure. Also, this was a site where I was going to build a camp. Kind of glad I didn't now. All those trees fell over in the winter. It's the first time I've been back up here since before winter. It looks like it's on the ground, but it's actually clear underneath. You just got to be careful when you get to the end and you don't go into the dirt. Do that with my bar. Just like that. So that's the basics from an amateur who's done this a few times. We don't burn a huge amount of wood at our house, but I caught all of it. And you don't have to be an expert, but you do have to pay attention to safety for sure. These things can kill you pretty quick. Don't be scared of them, but just treat them with the respect that they deserve. And there's a bunch of stuff that they don't tell you about on the internet when you're looking at using chainsaws and cutting wood. Things like your footing and getting tangled up on branches and things like that, because you're generally going to be in the forest and there's stuff everywhere. I mean, this is a pretty significant slope that I'm on. There's no flat ground here, and this is definitely not flat. So you're in rough terrain, things you have to look out for. Look up is another big tip that has been told to me many times. Like, before you do stuff, look up, make sure what's coming down might land on top of you, what might get hung up on. I've done that more than once, where I cut a tree down, I think it's okay, it goes the wrong way, ends up hung up, and then it's a bad day. So yeah, don't be afraid to do it, but just give it the respect it deserves. It's not difficult. It's a really great workout to do this stuff. I enjoy it actually, and it's satisfying to go harvest your own trees and your own firewood and go through that process. And then in the wintertime when it's real cold, if you live somewhere like I do, uh, it's satisfying when you put those pieces of wood in the wood stove and you're feeling the heat from it. So it's just something that I like to do. If you want more information, like better information from people that are way better at this than me, there's lots of resources on the internet. I'm going to recommend Bucking Billy Ray. He's kind of famous. He was on a TV show. I can't remember the name of the show. One of those logging shows, reality shows. Anyway, but he's got his own YouTube channel, and he's fanatical about chainsaws and sharpening saws and cutting trees, and he's just he's a bit of a character, but totally worth the watch. So Bucking Billy Ray. I'll see if I can stick a link here on the screen to his channel. I don't know him at all. Like I just watch some of his stuff. He's very entertaining, kind of like me, but better. And anyway, there's lots of resources out there. Encourage you to do it, and yeah. So if you can find the place to cut the wood, if you got a place to do it, and make sure that you're allowed to, for one thing, or you own the property, or somebody's letting you cut it. The other good part about doing this is I cut down a few of these trees like this, and this is a maple, so this will be good. This will end up being really good firewood. But I get a lot of trees that fall down from storms and things like that too. So I don't have to fell those trees, but I do have to cut them up, and it's just a source of firewood. I'm looking around here, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 trees within my site here that I could go and cut up for more firewood, and I could probably burn them this coming winter because they've probably been sitting there for a while. So great source of energy, wood, and yeah. So that's my beginner's take on cutting down trees.